Wanted. Wanted for conspiracy to murder. This is the program that brings you for the first time on the air a nationwide manhunt in action. The actual facts to date of a man wanted. From the record, hear the on-the-spot reports of the actual people involved. Nothing is withheld. No one is protected. Here are the dramatic eyewitness accounts of a man wanted. Wanted for conspiracy to murder. And now, Wanted's on-the-spot investigator, Walter McGraw.
Good evening. Once again, I'm going to take you around the country with me on a manhunt for a criminal now at large. This fugitive must be caught and brought to justice. That is your responsibility. Before this program is over, you'll know everything there is to know about this fugitive. I'm going to take you into the homes and offices, into penitentiaries and gang hideouts. Yes, even into the state capital of Michigan. There you will meet this gangster's friends, his enemies, and those who've been victimized by him. Some of these people were afraid to talk, but all of these people are putting themselves on the spot to give you first-hand information. Right now, all over the country, these eyewitnesses are standing by to aid in the capture of a man who is wanted. Tonight's case, that of State Senator Warren G. Hooper, is one of the filthiest murders that ever smashed through the newspapers of a nation. So listen, here are the facts.
The date, January 11th, 1945. The location, a lonely country road midway between Springport and the state capital of Lansing, Michigan.
The voices you hear next are the actual voices of the people who are involved in the case of State Senator Hooper. First, a citizen in Lansing, Michigan.
I'm M.B. Howard, District Passenger Agent, Great Lakes Greyhound Lines. I was returning home from a business call at Albion, Michigan, and while a short distance out of Springport, was stopped by two men to investigate a car filled with smoke and parked on the wrong side of the road. And they said that there was a bullet hole in the right rear window. I walked up to the car and listened, but could hear nothing, so I opened the door and saw a man slouched over. I reached in and pulled him out onto the roadway. From all appearances, which I had learned prior years being an undertaker, I noticed that he was dead. We covered him up, sent for the state police.
This is Captain Hanson of the Uniform Division of the Michigan State Police. We got a call and sent a car out to Highway 99. When the men got there, they discovered the body of a man who had been shot. Apparently, he'd been dragged from the car, and his body had been mutilated by fire. Now, closer investigation, the men discovered that this was one of the most important political figures in the state of Michigan, Senator Warren G. Hooper. We turned our report over to Captain Cooper of the Michigan State Police.
I'm Captain Edward Cooper, commanding officer of the Special Investigation Bureau, Michigan State Police, East Lansing, Michigan. Senator Hooper was no stranger to our department because he was one of two principal witnesses in the Leland W. Carr Graft Inquiry Grand Jury. In connection with his testimony before this grand jury, he had received several threatening anonymous telephone calls. Because of these calls, he was offered the services of a bodyguard, which he refused. After his body was found, I, with other officers of this department, visited the scene of the crime and discovered several footprints, which were made by a person of very small stature.
The job ahead, to find a small man with small feet who had both opportunity and motive. There were dozens of people who had the motive.
My name is Harry Sars, reporter for the Detroit News. The facts on this case are simply these. State Senator Hooper was to have been the principal state's witness in a case involving charges that members of the 1943 Michigan State Legislature were bribed to defeat a bill that would have increased the revenue to the state of Michigan from horse racing by more than $1 million. State Senator Hooper said he had facts and figures and will put them before the Leland W. Carr graft inquiry.
Motive for murder? Senator Hooper claimed he could prove certain political higher-ups had paid members of the Senate to kill a bill. Who were these men?
This is Al Niebuhr of the Detroit News. As Lansing correspondent for my paper on December 2nd, 1944, I sent the following dispatch. The Judge Leland W. Carr grand jury today issued a warrant charging a conspiracy to corrupt the 1943 legislature. Named in the warrant were Frank D. McKay, a longtime Republican boss of Michigan, who was dethroned several months ago as a Republican National Committeeman. Named with him in the warrant were Floyd Fitzsimmons of Benton Harbor, lobbyist and a sports promoter, and Representative William Green, Republican of Hillman County, a state legislator.
Frank D. McKay, Floyd Fitzsimmons, and William Green, three of Michigan's most important political figures, were to be tried for this crime.
But with the murder of star witness Hooper, there could be no trial.
State police went into high gear on a murder investigation. Question: was Hooper killed to keep him from talking? The state police combed the entire area from Albion to Lansing, looking for an answer.
I've seen certain members of Detroit's Purple Gang hanging around the Capitol lately.
Yeah, this here little fella comes to the Capitol building and asks the sergeant-at-arms about Senator Hooper.
Sure, they've been hanging around the senator's home, too. One of them went to the garage and asked which was the senator's car.
Those answers supplied a picture of the most vicious gang of hoodlums Detroit ever produced. The Purple Gang at work casing a job of murder. State police needed proof, but they had none. Dead end. Then a break policemen dream about. In Detroit, far from the scene of the crime, a young hoodlum named Al Kerner was booked and convicted on a charge of armed robbery. Kerner, looking for an angle to get a lighter sentence, took to letter writing.
I am William C. Ryan, the Undersheriff and Chief Deputy of Wayne County Sheriff's Office. We house a great number of prisoners, and amongst them was a fellow named Al Kerner. Now, of course, we censor all mail. It's very important we know what's going on between outsiders and the inmates, and we have a fellow who does nothing else but censor the mail. And this particular case, the fellow who censored the mail believed there was something unusual. He had heard a great deal about this case, and he brought this letter into me. And the letter was from Al Kerner. And in the letter, he said that he had some very important information regarding the murder of Senator Hooper, and that he wished to get in touch with Judge Carr. Well, of course, we knew that Inspector Branton of the Homicide Squad was in charge of this case, and we immediately got in touch with Inspector Branton and turned the letter over to him.
My name is George R. Branton, as former inspector in charge of the Homicide Squad of the Detroit Police Department. I took the letter written by Kerner and retained possession of the same. Later in the day, I went back to the Wayne County Jail and requested an interview with Kerner. He was brought into the interviewing room, and I informed him that I was Judge Carr's representative in the city of Detroit. I asked him if he was willing to reveal any information that he had that he felt was vital to the Hooper investigation as long as I was Judge Carr's representative. He said that he was. He said that shortly before Christmas, while in O'Leary's bar at Dexter Boulevard in Boston, he was approached by a man named Sam. He did not know Sam's last name, but Sam asked him if he was interested in making $3,000. Kerner said, naturally, I was, and asked him how it was to be done. He said that it was to take care of a politician who was doing too much talking. And from what had developed since that time, he felt it was the murder or the killing of the late Senator Hooper.
Now, Homicide Chief Branton's job was to find a Sam. Every hoodlum, torpedo, or plain stumblebum called Sam was brought in for questioning. Michigan was almost fresh out of Sam's when Homicide Chief Branton learned of a barber turned hoodlum who was now on parole. He was spending his time in Flint, Michigan, trying to get his barber's license back. His name was Sam Abramowitz. A picture of Sam Abramowitz was shipped to armed robber Kerner, and he identified it. Sam Abramowitz was taken in for questioning, and he talked.
I am Kim Sigler, former governor of Michigan. And prior to that time, I was the special prosecutor of the state graft grand jury. The things I'm going to tell you are taken from the testimony given by witnesses in court. Sam Abramowitz was a principal witness in two very important conspiracy trials involving the Hooper murder case. He said some political higher-up had put up $25,000 in escrow for some members of the Purple Gang to do the job. Some of this money was to go to the man who pulled the trigger. Sam Abramowitz was selected because he was an expert in handling dynamite. And it was believed that the easiest way to do away with Senator Hooper and keep him from testifying in court was to wire his car and then commit the murder by having the dynamite discharged and blow up his automobile. But the chance never developed just right for Sammy to accomplish this purpose. And so then they changed their procedure and decided to go over to Albion and case the job. There came a night when they decided that everything was right to commit the murder. Hooper was in his office. They laid in wait. They surrounded the place. They had their guns ready, and everything was all set to commit the job. And just about the time that they were ready to commit the murder, they discovered Senator Hooper's two little boys. Fine little chaps they were. And somehow or other, they seemed to lose their grip and decided that they just wouldn't commit the murder that night, seeing these little fellows around the room. And so they went away and decided then that they would lay in wait for him along the road. They eventually did do that very thing. Senator Hooper was murdered, and two of the men whom Sammy Abramowitz drove to Albion with him were Harry Fleischer, a big-time purple mobster, and Myron Seelig, better known as Mike Seelig, a man with small feet.
Now, for the first time, two names were named. Both purple mobsters, both paid gangsters. The notorious Harry Fleischer and the man with small feet, Mike Seelig. These two men were picked up and brought in for questioning.
Here again, Walter McGraw.
At this point in the case, the state of Michigan was in a strange position. It knew and could prove that Harry Fleischer and Mike Seelig had planned the murder of Senator Hooper. It also knew and could prove Fleischer and Seelig had attempted to murder Senator Hooper. But it did not know and could not prove that Fleischer and Seelig had actually murdered the senator. Therefore, the state had no murder charge. It could only prove what is called conspiracy to murder, and in Michigan that means 4.5 years in jail. In order to actually solve this murder, Kim Sigler had to make two men talk.
Seelig and Fleischer were not talking.
Problem: how to make two men talk. A 4.5 to 5 year rap wouldn't do it. No, Prosecutor Sigler needed to find a way to send these boys up for a long-term sentence, to give them plenty of time to think it over. First, Sigler went to court and got his conspiracy conviction. Then he started digging into their pasts, looking for a lead to the higher-ups. He didn't get it, but he did dig up some ancient history, and according to our reconstruction of the facts.
Mike Seelig and Harry Fleischer used to be the Detroit office for the outfit. You know, the nationwide syndicate. Whenever a gambling joint was making too much money, Fleischer and Seelig would muscle in and sell him protection for a piece of the club.
Sure. Take the case of the Greek Friendship Club in Pontiac. Jimmy the Greek used to run it. Sometimes during a friendly dice game, 60 to 70,000 bucks changed hands in a night. Well, the outfit hears of all this friendship being cut up, and they want a slice. Harry Fleischer and Mike Seelig try to sell Jimmy the Greek some high-class hold-up insurance for a piece of the take. But Jimmy the Greek wouldn't buy.
My name is Alf Strand, detective of the Pontiac Police Department. At 5:30 one morning, I received a call that the Aristocrat Club had been held up. This was an anonymous call. Through a long investigation of this case, we found that $1,200 had been taken and that the holdup had been engineered by Mike Seelig and Harry Fleischer.
Once again, information and no proof. But Prosecutor Sigler dug back and found some participants in that holdup who were willing to turn state's evidence.
Sure, Fleischer and Selleck masterminded the deal. They stayed in the car while 3 hired mugs went inside and did the actual holdup. Them 3 mugs was Candy Davidson, Sammy Chivas, and Pete Mahone. Fleischer and Selleck didn't even take a piece of that holdup. They was just interested in insurance.
With that information, Prosecutor Sigler went to court with a second case against Fleischer and Selleck. This time, the charge was armed robbery, and he got a second conviction, 25 years to life in the state prison at Jackson. Now Sigler had what he wanted. The boys were up on a life sentence, and Prosecutor Sigler felt they'd try to make a deal, information in return for a lighter sentence. Keeping the boys in jail was his only hope.
Harry Fleischer and Mike Selleck and their 3 co-defendants appealed to the state Supreme Court for reconsideration in both the Hooper and Pontiac Club convictions.
And they were released from Jackson Prison on bond while the state Supreme Court was reconsidering.
After so long an imprisonment, the boys felt they needed a vacation. On August 11th, 1946, word came from San Diego, California.
2 Detroit hoodlums, Harry Fleischer and Mike Seelig, are down here sunning themselves on the beach. Are they wanted by your department?
No, they were not wanted. They were free on bond. They remained free on bond for 3 years while their attorneys stalled preparing the appeal. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Kim Sigler had become governor of Michigan, and the state still pursued the case.
My name is Richard B. Foster. After Kim Sigler became governor, I was appointed special prosecuting attorney of the Ingham County Grand Jury. It was during this time that Harry Fleischer and Mike Seelig took an appeal from their conviction to the Michigan Supreme Court. After battling this matter for a period of 3 years, a decision was finally rendered by the court, and their appeal was denied and their convictions upheld.
Finally, 3 years after Hooper's death, a return to jail order was issued for all 5 men. But during these 3 years of bonded freedom, Candy Davidson had gone in for safecracking. He was in Kentucky serving a long-term sentence. Sammy Chivas was a mental patient at Ypsilanti Hospital. As for the others...
My name is Lieutenant Thomas P. Picking of the Detroit Police Department, Special Investigation Squad, formerly of Claremorris County, Mayo, Ireland. I'm a member of this department for 31 years. We received orders from Chief of Detectives Jack Harville to arrest on site Pete Mahone, Harry Fleischer, and Mike Seelig. Several teams of detectives was detailed to some of their favorite hangouts. We went to Pete Mahone's favorite hangout up on Woodard and Duffield and arrested him and immediately took him to police headquarters where he was turned over to the state police and taken to Jackson Prison. Mike Seelig and Harry Fleischer heard about the arrest of Pete Mahone and immediately fled the city.
Now Harry Fleischer and Mike Seelig were wanted. And the state turned to their bondsman, demanding the bondsman produce their clients. Said the bondsman, thinking of the $100,000 bond which they had posted,
I wish we could.
Bondsman Adolph Netzel, who stood to lose $50,000, his home and property, posted a reward of $2,500 for his former client, Mike Seelig.
My name is Louis R. Bebout. I'm a special assistant prosecuting attorney for the county of Oakland. I took part in the trial of Myron Selleck and others for robbery armed in the city of Pontiac. It became my duty to collect on the bonds which had been posted to guarantee their appearance. Mr. Selleck's bond had been furnished by one Adolph Netzel. In collecting these bonds, it was necessary to take judgment against Mr. Netzel and his wife, and then to proceed to collection. On the morning in question, I was at the courthouse in the city of Pontiac and prepared the necessary papers. At about 10:30 in the forenoon, I received a call from Mr. Netzel asking if I could get the papers to his home so that he could sign them there. He insisted that I come there alone and that I appear at noon. I did not believe it my duty to go to his home, and I did not go. However, it appears that his fellow bondsman, Guy Carter, and another bondsman, C.A. Mitchell, did go to Mr. Netzel's home.
Fellow bondsman Guy Carter and associate Mitchell arrived before noon at Netzel's home. Netzel had a gun in either hand. He said Guy Carter had talked him into putting up the bond, and he was going to get even. He said he was waiting for Prosecutor Bebot to arrive so he could kill Bebot first and Carter after.
For 2.5 hours, Netzel kept Carter and Mitchell at gunpoint. For 2.5 hours, he waited for Bebout, but Bebout didn't arrive.
Mitchell saw his chance, grabbed an andiron, and hit Netzel on the head, knocking him out. Carter took one of the guns.
My name is Bernard Gerard. I'm Chief Assistant Prosecutor of Oakland County. About 3 o'clock on the afternoon of the day that this incident occurred, we received a telephone call to the effect that Adolf Netzel had been murdered. About 15 minutes after the call, we were at the house. Immediately upon entering, I noticed Adolf Netzel's body lying in a semi-prone position. There was a vast accumulation of blood. He was quite dead and warm.
Netzel's $2,500 reward was withdrawn.
Harry Fleischer and Mike Selleck were still wanted.
I am Donald S. Leonard, Commissioner of the Michigan State Police. Harry Fleischer and Mike Selleck were nowhere to be found within the state of Michigan, and it was presumed that they had crossed the state line in effecting their escape. Federal authorities then issued warrants for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution or confinement, therefore. And the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, local and state police, have been conducting a nationwide search for them. Fleischer and Selleck were Michigan's most wanted fugitives.
Tip after tip came in, but no payoff until word came from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati police arrested one Jerome Mayer during a raid on a roadhouse. Mayor's counsel immediately served writ of habeas corpus, and he was released.
Later, a routine check of fingerprints proved the man calling himself Jerome Mayer was really Harry Fleischer.
Now Ohio was in the picture. Ohio roadblocks were set up, but they were too late. Fleischer had gone, and there was no word at all of Myron Selleck. Then from Cleveland, Ohio, came another break.
Detective Captain David Kerr, commanding the Homicide Squad, Cleveland Police Department. We had information that Harry Fleischer was now sunning himself just outside of Miami Beach, Florida. We immediately notified the regional office of the FBI in Cincinnati.
Fleischer, the eternal sunbather, was caught catnapping on the Florida sands. He was taken into custody. Questioned, he stubbornly maintained he had nothing to add to the Hooper murder case. But he's just starting that 25-year sentence, and he might talk. As for Mike Selleck, Fleischer maintains he has no idea where the little man with the little feet is hiding. It is not our function here to determine the guilt or innocence of a man, nor do we intend to. But, based on the facts you've heard tonight, and or other pertinent material, a nationwide manhunt is now in progress, and Myron Mike Selleck is wanted.
Here again is Walter McGraw.
You can help find Myron Selleck. But to do so, you must be informed of all the facts. What does he look like? How does he dress? What are his habits? Well, to find out, stand by. How can you recognize him? Listen, and listen carefully.
This is Jack Harville, Chief of Detectives, Detroit, Michigan. Following is the official description of Mike Selleck. He is 37 years old, 5 feet 6 1/2 inches tall, and weighs 130 pounds. He has a medium build, black hair, brown eyes. His complexion is dark. He has a cut scar on his forehead at the hairline.
Now back to Walter McGraw in New York.
If you should see Selleck, don't approach him. He's believed to be heavily armed. He's one of the most dangerous gangsters in the country today. Now, we have one more voice to add to the sum total you've heard tonight. It's the voice of the underworld.
This guy Selleck is some crumb. This boy was mixed up in everything. He was a smart kid in Detroit, so the outfit hires him. You know, that's the mananere. That's the Black Hand. They call it the Mafia. And in the inside, they call it the Outfit. That's the syndicate that's being investigated by the Senate. This guy Selleck takes his orders from nobody but them. With a big gee like Selleck, you'd figure he'd be found around all of the bright lights, the hot spots, making a big time with all the dames and packing away a lot of liquor. This guy used to like the life, but no more, 'cause he's a sick guy. This guy has got a serious social disease.
If you have no other way of seeing a picture of Selleck, go to your local post office. A poster with his picture and description is on the wall. Study that face.
Myron Selleck is 37 years old. He's a little man with little feet. He's 5 feet 6 inches, black hair, dark eyes, pockmarked complexion. He fancies himself a Sharpie. He has a cut scar on his forehead near the hairline.
Unfortunately, dirty politics is no stranger to this nation. But we Americans can do something about it. And the people of Michigan can do something about it. The case of State Senator Hooper must not die in the unsolved files. You, Mr. and Mrs. Public, you can help find Mike Selleck. He may be the key to this case. Now listen, I've just received word that Mike Selleck may be in a small private hospital. Nurses, doctors, this is your case. Keep your eyes open. My informants tell me Selleck has lost weight, he's sallow, cheeks sunken, eyes clouded. But study his picture and you'll still recognize him. Remember, a small private hospital. The locale, I've heard it's probably Kentucky or Georgia. You hear that? Latest information, Mike Selleck is probably in a small local hospital in Kentucky or Georgia. Let's catch this bum. Now, this is Walter McGraw telling you there's no time like now to wipe out crime.
Be with us again next week when you will hear the actual people give their own eyewitness accounts of a brutal and mysterious murder solved by a hat. The killer is now wanted. Wanted for murder.
All material heard tonight was factual from the record. The various people heard are the actual witnesses who talked directly to you from their homes and farms, from police stations, penitentiaries, and gang hideouts. Tonight's report was written by P.L. Mayer. Music was by Morris Mimorsky. The narrator was Fred Collins. Wanted were supervised for NBC by James Kovac, produced and directed by Walter McGraw. Next, it's Bill Stern with news of the world of sports on NBC.